Welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast on today, Tuesday, April 15th. Just talked a little bit about a few Big Ten teams. We're going to have a little fun here, though. We're going to talk about some guys that I think could have their numbers retired from this year's draft class, the 2025 draft class. Came out that Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter are both going to have their numbers retired by Colorado. I thought that was kind of interesting. I do have Travis Hunter on my list of guys who could potentially have their jerseys retired. Obviously, he is going to have his retired, so that's not a question mark anymore. But I think of those two guys, Travis Hunter makes a lot more sense to have his number retired. This was a kid that won the Heisman this past season, just playing both ways of the ball. We haven't really seen that since really Desmond Howard, but even Desmond Howard played primarily on defense, did play a little bit of offense. Travis Hunter played both ways for the most part the entire time he was in college. Was able to really bring back a culture of winning football kind of to Colorado, to Boulder for at least a little bit of time. This is a kid that's a culture setter, trend setter. Coming out of high school, he was the number one overall prospect, committed to Jackson State. So kind of always did things his own way. And that's going to be a player that fans will appreciate even further down the line, 15, 20 years from now. And just the numbers, too. 96 catches, 1,250 receiving yards this season, 15 receiving touchdowns, as well as having a rushing touchdown. And then he also had 35 tackles, had 4 interceptions, forced 1 fumble, elite production on both sides of the ball, and just, I think, kind of the whole name, I guess, just what Travis Hunter brings to a program. I think that's going to be a guy that his college career is really looked on favorably. I don't love the Shedeur Sanders jersey number being retired. I can understand part of it. I think from a numbers perspective, some of the stats that he put up during his time at Colorado really kind of showcased his skill. I think that might be more of, hey, Deion's the head coach and Shedeur's going to get his jersey retired. But I could be wrong. I don't know about that one. Another guy I'm going to look at is Ashton Jeanty. Obviously, he wore number 2. The single digits are a little harder to retire just because everybody wants to wear a single digit nowadays. But just what he did at Boise State, setting Boise records, almost setting the NCAA rushing record. He was 27 yards away from breaking Barry Sanders' single year rushing record. Had 2,600 rushing yards this season, which is unbelievable. Averaged 7 yards a carry for those 2,600 yards. Had 350 carries this season. He had 29 rushing touchdowns. Had 23 catches. Had 46 catches last season. Again, had a really strong 2023 season. Had over 1,900 total yards. Had 1,350 rushing, 570 offense. But the fact that he ran for 2,600 rushing yards is pretty unbelievable. Obviously, only Barry Sanders has had that type of season before. This is a guy that I would have never expected we'd see anybody come anywhere close to touching Barry Sanders' record. But Ashton Jeanty was right there. And then just the team success, too. He basically carried Boise State to the Mountain West title this season, carried them to a college football playoff berth. They did have a lot of other weapons. Maddox Madsen is a pretty solid quarterback for them. But that team ran through Ashton Jeanty. Boise State, their success was pretty much on his back. And I think that's going to be a guy that, if you look at his career down the line, what he did for Boise, just both individually as well as for the team, is pretty remarkable. I think Boise's a place that could probably recognize that and kind of showcase what he did for them. Another guy that's kind of under the radar, but he's probably going to be a second round pick in the draft this year. I think, though, he's almost more likely to have his number retired is Shavon Revel Jr., East Carolina cornerback. And so this kid is beloved in East Carolina, has a really cool story. He was a warehouse worker in 2021, working night shifts. He drove after his 10-hour shift to a camp at East Carolina. They'd offer him a scholarship on the spot then. Ended up joining the program kind of after all that and really worked his butt off. 2022 played a little bit. He got hurt then, but he really kind of came into his own in 2023, 2 years ago. He had 12 pass breakups. He blocked 2 kicks. He had 54 total tackles. And he forced incompletions on 22% of the passes that were thrown his way. That really only trailed Quinyon Mitchell, who obviously was a first-rounder for the Eagles out of Toledo. And then after that 2023 season, Revel had a bunch of NIL offers. There were a couple different schools that were looking at him. I know Louisville was one, but he had offers for basically $1 million a year to go play at other programs, bigger programs. He turned those all down. East Carolina told him, hey, we can't pay you this. It's just not in our NIL fund. It's not in our budget. And he still turned that down. He said, no, I'm staying here. Y'all gave me a chance. You gave me a shot to compete. I'm going to stay here at East Carolina. He really got off to a great start this past season, 2024. He had 2 interceptions in the first 3 games. Took one to the house, had a pick 6. But then he tore his ACL after the 3rd game of the season in practice midweek, just on a random non-contact injury. Kind of hit the turf weird, tore his ACL. So this is a guy that doesn't have a ton of elite level production, but I think the story and just the program being at East Carolina, it's not, a really high caliber program where a lot of guys are coming through. I think that could be a place that eventually you see his number being in the rafters, especially if, he does have a lengthy NFL career, a successful NFL career. I think that's a guy that, you could see his number 28 being retired at East Carolina just for the story. And he did have a couple really solid years there where they could look at the production still, it's still really possible just from a production point of view. The last guy I kind of want to touch on is Mike Green out of Marshall. Now, I will preface this. Marshall only has 1 jersey retired, and it's not the 2 names that I thought of. It's some guy from back in the 50s or 60s. I can't remember his name right now. But Chad Pennington, Randy Moss, both do not have jerseys retired at Marshall, which I kind of thought was crazy just from, their run that they had when they were at Marshall. But Mike Green is Marshall's biggest profile prospect by far since then. He's probably going to be a first-round pick. This was a guy, though, he had an awesome 2024 season. He was a transfer from Virginia, transferred in after 2022, but he was at Marshall the past 2 seasons. And he had a good 2023 season, had 41 tackles, 4.5 sacks. So good, but not great. But this past season had 17 sacks, led the FBS, had 81 total tackles. And also Marshall was 10-3 this past season. Finished first in their conference, had a really good year. Kind of brought Marshall back to winning football. I think that could be a guy that maybe down the road, again, him and Shavon Revel, I think, are 2 guys that this kind of depends on how their NFL careers go. But I think if Mike Green has a solid NFL career, has a lengthy one, he could potentially also be a guy that maybe does get his jersey eventually retired by Marshall. I think that one's probably a little more unlikely, just because you look at the history, too, of Chad Pennington, Randy Moss. Both don't have their numbers up in the rafters there. So it'd probably be kind of hard for Mike Green to get his up there before those guys. So we are going to end our show for the day. Thank you so much for tuning into the GSMC College Football Podcast, presented to you by the GSMC Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show, like, follow, leave a positive review, and if you want even more sports content, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, just more of those sports content, sports updates that you love. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to